We are all going to experience a time in our lives when we may have to have a conversation with another person that we don't want to have. As humans, we are a social species, but it doesn't mean that we're very good at communicating. Today, we're going to learn how we can be better at communicating with other people. In this video, we will identify what kind of person you are when in conflict and what you can do to make your interactions with other people run smoother, be more beneficial to everyone involved, and keep fewer misunderstandings from arising in conversations. It's important to figure out, firstly, what kind of person you are when it comes to conflict. This can be sorted either into a passive subtype or an aggressive subtype. To see which one you fit with, we are going to start with this quick quiz. Make sure you jot down which of the following statements you agreed with so that you can figure out your subtype at the end of the quiz. Number 1, I go along with something even if I don't like it. Number 2, I push people to do what's right, even if they're upset. Number 3, I try to be pleasant and easygoing, no matter what people do or say. Number 4, I give people a piece of my mind when they deserve it. Number 5, I always try to be sensitive to what other people do or say. Number 6, I know what I want and insist on it, even if it means having to get angry. Number 7, when there's conflict, I tend to give in and let things go the other person's way. Number 8, when people don't do what's appropriate or reasonable, I don't let them get away with it. Number 9, I'll pull away from a relationship rather than say anything that could be upsetting. Number 10, you can't let people continue being selfish or stupid. You have to shake them until they see what they're doing. Number 11, I leave people alone and let them be whatever they are. Number 12, if people ignore my needs or insist on things that don't work for me, I get more and more upset until they pay attention. If you tended to agree to all odd numbers, then your predominant style is passive. If you agreed to even numbers, then your predominant style is aggressive. These interpersonal patterns have a huge impact on your relationships. Being passive may seem safe as you go along with what the other person expects. However, long-term, this creates frustration and resentment that builds up inside of you. Eventually, the relationship becomes so painful that it blows up and collapses, or you may even run away. In the short term, it may protect the relationship, but in the long term, it will destroy the relationship to stop the pain. Being aggressive also destroys relationships though, because it pushes people away. An aggressive interpersonality style can derive from two sources. 1, a strong sense of there being a right or wrong way to act in the situation, otherwise known as black and white thinking. Or 2, a need to control interpersonal events. You always expect a person to act in a way that you want them to. So when they don't, you become overwhelmed by anger and may explode, which drives people away. So how can we stop letting ourselves fall into these interpersonal styles? Well, firstly, here's a quick lesson for everyone. Relationships require attention. Maintaining a good relationship depends on noticing the other person's feelings and reactions and then watching the process between both of you. We can use mindfulness skills to make sure we are observing a person's facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language to get a fix on the mood and state of the relationship. Paying attention means staying in the here and now, not focusing on what you're going to say next or some memory you have. It means remaining present to what your 5 senses are experiencing in the now. We all know that communication is a two-way street, but listening is an active process, not a passive one. Listening requires full commitment to understand what the other person thinks and feels about a problem. So whilst you do need to be assertive in yourself, we have to remember to have empathy for the person on the other end of the chat, and we need to understand where they are coming from. When you do this, you'll be able to see when trouble is coming, without it overwhelming you. You can also gain time to ask clarifying questions that can help you correct misconceptions. By not paying attention, you are focusing away from the moment between you and others. This has a price. You may miss vital cues about the other person's reactions or needs. You may end up projecting inaccurately your fears and emotions on the other. You could end up blowing up or running away when you become surprised by a negative response you could have seen coming. Paying attention also allows you to modulate how much assertiveness you need to use with that person. You can do this by comparing the urgency of your need with the vulnerability of the other person. The more urgent and less vulnerable the person you're communicating with is, the more forceful you can be with the way you communicate your needs. However, if your need is fairly low in comparison to the emotional vulnerability of the person you're conversing with at the moment, it may be best to approach gently and with kindness. Or it may be best to hold off the conversation until the other person is in a bit of a better headspace to talk with you. Many of us who struggle with social conversations tend to fall somewhere on the neurodivergent spectrum, which makes it more difficult for us to understand that when you listen to someone, you're not supposed to just sit and stare blankly at them, like I often do. Instead, we can ask developing questions that can help us understand where the other person is coming from. Now let's take a look at 10 ways that people sabotage their effective listening abilities and see if you can relate to any of them.
Are you doing this on purpose? I seriously feel like you've just ignored everything I just said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't listen to what you said properly. I was just trying to think about how we can solve this.
You weren't thinking of solutions. Come on. You're always daydreaming. You're never here with me.
Okay, no, I do that a lot and I'm sorry. I just find it super hard to focus.
And that's the problem. You never listen to what I have to say. You are always ignoring me. It's impossible to believe you're not doing this on purpose.
It's really not like that.
How can you seriously say that this wasn't on purpose? You decided to ignore me in the first place.
I am telling you that I am not ignoring your needs on purpose. I am trying to find a solution to this. But you also haven't even listened to my needs either.
That's because your requests aren't as important as mine are right now. I cannot even start to think about what you want when you won't listen to what I have to say about mine.
You seriously think my needs are less important than yours? Did you just say that right now?
Oh, forget it. Just like you forgot to do the dishes when I asked you.
Again, I just forgot, and anyway, this has nothing to do with.
I know you did this on purpose. I know you did.
Please, I know that I am the one who is in the wrong here. I am trying to tell you that I am not trying to ignore your needs. Please just work with me so that I can find a solution to this.
Can you see why that argument was toxic? Well, if you couldn't, let's break that down for you.
Are you doing this on purpose? I seriously feel like you've just ignored everything I just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't listen to what you said properly. I was just trying to think about how we can solve this.
You weren't thinking of solutions. Come on. You're always daydreaming. You're never here with me.
Okay, no, I do that a lot and I'm sorry. I just find it super hard to focus.
And that's the problem. You never listen to what I have to say. You are always ignoring me. It's impossible to believe you're not doing this on purpose.
It's really not like that.
How can you seriously say that this wasn't on purpose? You decided to ignore me in the first place.
I am telling you that I am not ignoring your needs on purpose. I am trying to find a solution to this. But you also haven't even listened to my needs either.
That's because your requests aren't as important as mine are right now. I cannot even start to think about what you want when you won't listen to what I have to say about mine.
You seriously think my needs are less important than yours? Did you just say that right now?
Oh, forget it. Just like you forgot to do the dishes when I asked you.
Again, I just forgot, and anyway, this has nothing to do with.
I know you did this on purpose. I know you did.
Please, I know that I am the one who is in the wrong here. I am trying to tell you that I am not trying to ignore your needs. Please just work with me so that I can find a solution to this.
So how could things have gone differently in that conversation when the aggressive subtype was resisting the passive subtype statements? The answer is to use the 5 conflict management skills: mutual validation, broken record, probing, clouding, otherwise known as assertive agreement, and assertive delay. When people aren't listening to you, one of the most common reasons is that they feel invalidated. They don't experience that they're being heard, so they keep pouring on their arguments and assertions. You can short-circuit the problem with mutual validation. Validating arguments doesn't mean agreeing with them. It means, instead, that you understand the needs, feelings, and motivations. You get it? You see how the other person could think and feel that way. Thus, mutual validation means you acknowledge and appreciate their experience. You understand where they're coming from, and then you validate your own experience as well.
Are you doing this on purpose? I seriously feel like you've just ignored everything I just said.
I understand that you might feel ignored when I don't immediately respond to what you've said. And you have every right to feel that way. I probably would feel that way if you appeared to be staring into space when I am trying to tell you my problems.
Oh, well, thanks for that, I guess.
On my end, I feel like you do not understand that my facial expressions and mannerisms don't always represent how I am feeling or what I am thinking. So I feel very frustrated when you assume what I am feeling or thinking. Again, I understand why you feel ignored, but I also feel frustrated because I am not being understood. We are both coming from reasonable places. They're just 2 different issues that unfortunately seem to clash. And that means we need to find a solution so that we can move forward from this, where we will both feel happy.
Notice how in this example, mutual validation includes a sentence that starts "I understand" and another one that begins "on my end." These 2 sentences establish that you appreciate both points of view. This doesn't mean that you necessarily have to agree with what they have said, but clouding allows you to agree in part to calm the other individual down. The key is to find some part of what's being said that you can accept, and then acknowledge that the other person is right about that. Ignore the rest of their argument. One way to agree is to modify words of sheer exaggeration, such as always and never. But sometimes, you may have to repeat yourself for somebody to get the message. This is where the broken record comes in. Formulate a short, specific, easy-to-understand statement about what you want. Ideally, keep it to 1 sentence. Offer no excuses or explanations. Stand or sit straight, and talk in a strong, firm voice. then just keep repeating the statement as many times as necessary, varying a word here or there but not much else. Don't argue, don't get angry, and don't try to debate or refute anything the other person says. Don't answer any why questions. Why do you want to? Because that just gives the other person ammunition for their arguments. Respond by saying I just prefer it or that's just how I feel. Under no circumstances should you offer additional information or evidence for your point of view. Just repeat, politely and clearly, like a broken record. If the other person continues to challenge you, then flip the discussion onto them by using probing questions such as asking what is truly bothering them about the situation. The key phrase here is, what is it about this situation that bothers you? Just keep asking until you get the answer that means something useful. Okay, so it's time for a quick activity. I want you to think about a conversation you had recently that didn't go as you planned, or think of one that you need to have in the future with someone. Then you're going to practice writing out how you could have a conversation with this person. Think of it as a rehearsal. Make sure to be mindful of how they may be feeling. Keep things neutral and calm, and don't blame or jump to conclusions. You could say something like, how are things between us? Or is everything okay? But also remember to notice your feelings in the interaction. How could things be said in a way that preserves the relationship while still being assertive? You have 5 minutes on the countdown now. So in that activity, did you notice how things might change if you continue to be present in the moment? Sometimes it's not about whether we are paying attention that causes conflict to arise. Every relationship is about compromising on what each other's wants and needs are. When you or the other person doesn't agree with what each other wants or needs, then it can lead to conflict. For every relationship, you must know and say what you desire, notice or find out what the other person desires, and then negotiate and compromise so you can at least get some of what you want whilst also giving what you can of what the other person wants. If this ratio isn't balanced, then your relationship will become unstable. Paying attention to what each other desires and using assertiveness skills to negotiate conflicts is vital. Every relationship also requires keeping a delicate balance between seeking what you want to do and doing what you think you should do. If most of your focus is being directed toward getting and doing what you want with little attention to their needs, then you'll soon earn resentment. If you're overbalanced on the side of shoulds, then the relationship will feel like a joyless burden and you'll begin to dream of escape. Again, all leading to an explosion. Now, I'm going to say some statements, and I want you to see how many you can relate to. Number 1, you should try to give everything that's asked of you in a relationship, even when it means putting your own needs aside. Number 2, when someone is in pain, you should do anything required to help them. Number 3, you should be caring and considerate at all times. Number 4, there is a right way to act with people, and it should be followed even if it means keeping quiet about your feelings and needs. Number 5, you shouldn't say no to people because it's impolite and selfish to say no or ask for things. Number 6, you shouldn't express feelings that might upset someone. It's wrong. Number 7, you should respond to the needs of others because their needs are a high priority. Number 8, you should never hurt or offend anyone. Number 9, you should try not to disappoint others. Number 10, if I need something, it means there is something wrong or bad about me. Number 11, I won't be able to stand it if the other person gets mad or says no. And you shouldn't ask for something if you know the other person doesn't want to give it. Number 12, I have no control over anything. The more you can say yes to these statements, the stronger your beliefs are about the right and wrong way to relate with others, and the more likely you are to deny your own needs. But every human being needs things from other human beings, whether it's attention, support, love, help, or just plain kindness. You may feel that it's selfish to ask for things because messages in your early family said that your needs didn't count, or that your needs were less important than the needs of others. When you examine it, is it true? Is there something fundamentally wrong with you that makes your needs relatively unimportant? The truth is that everyone's needs are valid and equally important. It doesn't make you selfish to ask for things or set limits. It's normal. It's healthy and necessary. We are not sufficient with just ourselves, and our whole lives are spent negotiating with others for everything we require to survive, physically and emotionally. So needing things can't be shameful or wrong. It is basic to the human condition. You have the right to tons of things just like everyone else. You have a right to need things from others. You have a right to put yourself first sometimes. You have a right to feel and express your emotions or your pain. You have the right to be the final judge of your beliefs and accept them as legitimate. You have the right to your opinions and convictions. You have the right to your experience, even if it's different from that of other people. You have a right to protest any treatment or criticism that feels bad to you. You have a right to negotiate. You have a right to ask for help, emotional support, or anything else that you need even though you may not always get it. You have a right to say no. Saying no, it doesn't make you bad or selfish. You have a right not to justify yourself to others. You have a right not to take responsibility for someone else's problem. You have a right to choose not to respond to the situation. You have a right sometimes. They inconvenience or disappoint others. Making requests is necessary for taking care of yourself. Whether this is asking for directions, asking to change tables at a restaurant, asking your mechanic to show you the parts he replaced on your car, or asking someone not to smoke in your house, these requests are all about self-protection and quality of life. If you have trouble making such requests, you can easily end up feeling helpless or resentful. The ability to say no is a vital part of assertiveness. You need to know when and how to say no to things and stand up for your rights. Remember, you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do unless it is necessary, such as eating or paying your bills. But I know that's easier said than done.
Do you get it? Do you get my joke about the track? Okay, there's a whole page of this.
So I've summarized this into a basic step-by-step. Firstly, you'll want to ensure you're validating the other person's needs or desires, but then give a clear statement of your preference for them not to do it. For example, if someone invited me out to watch an action movie, I might say the action movie looks fun, but I prefer to watch something calmer tonight. However, interpersonal skills won't do much good if you don't know what you want in the situation. And if you can't clearly articulate your needs, all you're left with is frustration. I understand that hearing an angry refusal hurts. Sometimes it hits so hard and suddenly that it takes your breath away. But is it true that you can't stand it? Think of a rejection you've suffered in your life. They were difficult, but you survived them. Refusals hurt, there's no doubt about it. But the worst thing is living with years of pain because you've never asked for what you want. In contrast to this myth, a healthy alternative coping thought is, I have a right to ask things even if the other person won't give them. Remember, if you don't ask, you don't get. When making a simple request, there doesn't even have to be much emotion involved at all. All you need to be able to do is give a brief justification of what your issue is, followed by a softening statement that asks a direct question. For example, I could say, I am having trouble lifting this heavy box. Would you mind helping me for a moment? It would be appreciated. See, you can say what you want in a clear manner of fact way, which keeps the situation calm. It's essential to try and word your request in a way that seems normal and reasonable, that anyone would be happy to accommodate for. The more that you elaborate or try to explain the situation, the more resistance you're likely to run into. This can be hard at first for those who have a hard time accepting that their needs are legitimate, or those who have social anxiety. But you can practice making a simple request just once a day at first, and over time it will get easier to do. This can be just by asking people for directions in the street, or asking someone if they know what the time is. But remember, you can't control the behavior of others if they do choose to reject your requests, even though some people go crazy trying. What can be controlled is your behavior. Passive or aggressive styles often have bad outcomes. People ignore your needs or get angry and resist you. That's why you feel helpless. The strategies you're using aren't effective. Assertive behavior gets better results. People more often than not listen and respond positively. So instead, maybe a helpful alternative coping thought is, I can choose to behave in more effective ways. Also remember, even though we always feel like we are in the right, we aren't always. Also, more than one person can be right about a situation. A third major block to using interpersonal skills is high emotion. Sometimes your best intentions and most carefully laid out plans go up in smoke when you're upset. For some people in particular who have grown up in abusive homes, getting angry can cause a dissociative fugue state. In that frame of mind, they may do or say something that upon later reflection feels like it has been done by someone else.
I never wanted this to happen. Something is happening to me, but I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna fix it all.
There is good evidence that many angry and dissociative states are responsible for a lot of emotional and even physical violence. When you feel a strong emotion, such as being afraid of something, interpersonal skills go out the window. You're just too full of catastrophic what-ifs to think clearly, which can scare you into using aggressive and aversive strategies, or they can cause you to avoid a situation altogether. Your emotions are a very important part of what's going to happen within your communications with others, as well as identifying your needs so that we can assertively ask for them. Do you feel excited, happy, lustful, or do you possibly feel sad, betrayed, ignored? What can you do when overwhelming emotion threatens to unravel your learned interpersonal skills? Well, there are two things that you can learn to do right now. Firstly, you can pay attention to the red flags that indicate you are starting to lose control. These could be feeling hot or flush, hair pounding, shortness of breath, tension in your hands, arms, forehead, or shoulder, stalking more rapidly or more loudly than usual, feeling a strong need to win, to crush someone, to make them feel bad. The net result is that you don't function well or aren't effective. But wise mind meditation can help you to manage in the face of fear, as can mindful breathing. Another thing you can do is directly confront your catastrophic thoughts by checking the facts of the situation. Next time you are in a conversation where your emotions become overwhelming, I want you to think about what your fear is in that present moment. Maybe you're scared that your partner is going to leave you. Or maybe you are hurt because your friend did something that didn't seem big to them, but to you, it betrayed your trust. Whatever the situation is, just ask yourself why you are feeling what you are feeling. Then I want you to try and list all of the evidence that your fear is rational and likely to happen. After that, you need to do the opposite and find the evidence that shows your fear might be irrational and is less likely than you think to occur. Once you have balanced out the evidence, you can see whether your fear is actually likely to happen or even harm you if it does. And if the fear is likely to happen, then you can make a plan ahead of time, which will make it easier to cope when it does eventually happen. But you also don't have to answer every question and find a solution to every problem that's going to arise in relationships with immediate action. If the situation is overwhelming for you and you feel like you are likely to act irrationally, then you have every right to leave the situation. People will often pressure you to make a decision or agree with a plan right away. Assertive delay allows you to take a break, whether for a few minutes or several hours. During the interval, you can calm down, think carefully about what's being said, and prepare a good response. But please don't leave your vulnerable friends on read during heated text debates, because it might lead them to worry about you, which will only escalate the situation or might make them feel like you might be trying to emotionally manipulate them. To avoid this, make sure you give a clear statement to indicate you are going to leave the conversation for now and come back when you are ready. This could be you've told me a lot, and I need time to sift through and see what I think. This is important, and I want to think carefully before I say anything. Now that you are aware of your feelings, you can learn the first communication skill that you can use during conflict, which is called the I feel when you because and please could you. Using this template, we can create a statement which clearly expresses how we feel to the other person. For example, I could say I feel frustrated when you leave dirty laundry on the floor instead of putting it in the basket because it leaves the house feeling messy. And I always then have to clean up after you. Please, could you be more mindful that we live together and share the same space? So now that we know most of the basics when it comes to your communications with others, let's have a look at how to negotiate with others. When a conflict arises that requires negotiation between you and someone else, you need to start from the position that each of you has valid needs. The Raven checklist will keep you on track. Raven stands for the following: relax, avoid the aversive, validate the other person's need or concern, examine your values, and neutral voice. So firstly, we need to relax. Accept conflict calmly. Take a deep breath before you say the next thing. Release tension as you exhale. Remember the self-soothing techniques, such as keeping something soft and comforting on you. Remember the coping ahead skills. What could you do to relax in this situation? Pace breathing? Counting? Next, we need to avoid the aversive. Keep in mind the aversive strategies you might be tempted to use, and monitor what you say to avoid them. Then, validate the other person's need or concern. Focus on a fair, mutually agreeable outcome where both people can get some of their needs met. Make sure to also examine your values. How do you want to be treated in a relationship? How do you want to treat others? What do you want to achieve? Not only regarding the conflict, but in this relationship? And make sure to maintain a neutral voice. Try to keep anger and contempt out of your voice. So next time you are in a confrontation, ask yourself, what would a Raven do? Once you're committed to staying within the Raven guidelines, it's time to start the actual negotiation process. It begins with each person taking turns and offering solutions. Make sure that the solution you offer addresses at least some of the needs of the other person. If you're unsure of what their needs are, then make sure to ask them. Once you've each offered several alternative solutions without agreement, it's time to compromise. Here are some classic compromising solutions.
You always ignore me. I want you to spend more time with my family.
Okay. How about we do this tit for tat then? I will spend the day with you and your family on Sunday if you agree to. Spend the day with me and my family next Sunday. Does that sound fair?
I don't want to spend time with your family.
Dude, compromise with me here. I mean, we could maybe have a picnic in the park with both of our families on Sunday?
You think that's a better solution than the first?
Well, you're not agreeing that we both do. Both on separate occasions, so what do you suggest? You won't agree that we see either?
Okay, Fine. How about this? We do the two separate family events, but we do it like a trial period. If I feel uncomfortable after the first hour, with them we make an excuse and we leave.
I agree to that as long as you also agree to that. If I feel uncomfortable after the first hour, we leave your family event.
I can accept that, but also you have to do the dishes for that week.
Okay, I will. And you have to do the laundry on the week that we see your family.
There we go then. Agreement.
See how multiple alternate solutions were offered there, and in the end, they were able to find a compromise that suited both of them. Inevitably, problems and conflicts will show up in your relationships. Sometimes you will blow up or shut down, but the key is to learn from what happened and use that to polish your skills. No setback is completely negative if it helps you be more effective next time. The Communication Effectiveness Checklist will help you review interpersonal problems and become clearer about their causes. This is a starting point to evaluate interactions that you wish could have gone better. Identify the problems first, then decide which ones you want to work on. After you have identified the issues, make a specific plan for how you are going to change your behavior next time. Don't try to use everything because you'll never remember it all. Just focus on a few changes that might lead to big improvements. Write down specifically what you're going to do differently and in which situations. Firstly, ask yourself if you were clear about what you wanted or what you didn't want so that you could say no. Were you aware of your values and how you would like to have been treated in return? Then ask yourself if you used any of the aversive strategies, these being discounting their needs, withdrawing from or abandoning the conversation, threatening the other person, blaming the other person for everything that has happened within the situation you are responding to, belittling the other person, guilt-tripping them, derailing from the conversation, or taking away from the needs of the other person to get your way. Or on the flip side, Did you use any passive strategies such as avoiding or withholding from the situation, or shutting down entirely? Did you experience any blocking factors that might have limited the use of your newfound skills? These could be your high emotions, your fears, a toxic relationship, or a believed myth about the relationship, such as thinking it would be impolite to say no to them. How intense was the conversation you had? Perhaps you were too forceful on a more vulnerable person? Or perhaps you weren't forceful enough so they didn't take you seriously? Did you use the correct assertive language? This would be to use facts instead of judgments, so if you spent the whole time yelling you, instead of I feel statements, you might need to work on rewording what you say, otherwise, it may come across as an attack. Were you listening to what was being said in the conversation? Or were you mind reading what you think they might believe, rehearsing what you were going to say next in your head, filtering only what you want to hear, judging what they had to say, advising them when they weren't looking for advice, sparring against them when they need support, forcing the belief that you're right on them and that only you can be right, changing the topic of the conversation, or daydreaming about something entirely different? Did you remember to use your conflict management skills of mutual validation, the broken record, probing, clouding, and assertive delay? Or perhaps the échelon more within your negotiation style itself? Did you forget to use Raven? Were you relaxed? Did you avoid the aversive? Did you remember to validate the other person's needs and concerns? Did you stick to your values? Did you remember to keep a neutral voice? How were you able to compromise with the other person? You don't have to suddenly be perfect at communication after watching this video. It takes time to be good at something, especially something as delicate and unpredictable as human interaction. We can take it one step at a time though, to focus on one small thing that we can change, and the more we practice those changes, the easier they will come to us by habit. The most important thing to remember about your new interpersonal skills is to keep working on them. Your persistence will benefit you. Shrug it off when things go wrong, figure out what happened, and then make a new plan. You can change your relationships and your life. All you have to do is keep trying. It's also important to remember that relationships are about balance. So if the person on the other end of the conversation isn't trying to make it easy, they're not worth having a conversation with. In relationships where people use aversive strategies, you can make your interpersonal skills very difficult to use. No matter how determined you are to be assertive rather than aggressive or passive, people who blame, threaten, or belittle you can often trip you up and make you want to explode or run away. The best solution is to get away from these types of people. As much as you would like them to change, if they're not putting in the effort like you are, then it's unlikely they ever will change, which means that you'll never stop being vulnerable to their attacks. Remember, you are the one who is working on becoming a better version of yourself, and they are not. You have to remember that you cannot change anyone. They must make the first steps to change, and unfortunately, most people don't see anything wrong with their behavior, so they will never attempt to change it. In case you didn't know, the skills that you just learned today are also taught in interpersonal effectiveness skills within dialectical behavior therapy. This component of the therapy workbook uses a composite of social skills training, assertiveness training, and listening skills, which have been proven to be extremely beneficial, especially for those on the neurodivergent spectrum. But I believe that everyone should have a go at learning how to communicate better, as it keeps your relationships healthy and alive. So please share this around so we can make social conversation easier everywhere.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed and have learned something new. Comment below what else you would like to see on my channel and hit subscribe to see more. Bye guys!